Hello, I'm Oliver and this is Deep Cuts, a channel dedicated to music for lovers of music. This is the roundup of all the records that I listened to in February 2017 and what I thought of them. It was actually a really good month for music, I thought. There's 4 or 5 records that I've really enjoyed and would thoroughly recommend you to check out. So if you're here to catch up on the stuff you missed in February, then you've got quite a lot to catch up on. There was obviously, of course, a couple of crappy ones I didn't enjoy, but you know, there's always going to be the way, isn't it? Let's start. Sampha. Process. Sampha is a songwriter, producer, vocalist from London who's actually been around for quite a while now, whether you've noticed him or not. He's guested on many a Subtract track over the years. He's worked on a couple of different Drake tracks from his 2013 record. He worked on one of the tracks on FKA Twigs' LP1, which was fantastic. He's done a lot of different things and he's really gained a lot of traction in the industry for being a dependable, innovative producer and guest vocalist. So much so that the buzz surrounding this album release has been quite sizable, really. People are really excited and interested to see what he's going to come up with in his own personal space. Fortunately, it lived up to the hype. This is a really strong debut album from Sampha. It's a pop R&B record that isn't afraid to experiment with forms, yet the final package is equally explorative and gripping as it is broadly accessible. Sampha knows exactly how to create a rich sonic environment, bursting with delicious samples and beautiful instrumental flourishes, and it all converges so well with his breathy, satiny vocal tone. Like a true pop auteur, this album has the dexterity to move around different styles and different ideas without ever straying away from that core vision. Single Blood on Me fuses polyrhythmic percussion and piano, and it generates this really spacious atmosphere for Sampha's impassioned vocal delivery. I love his vocal delivery on this track. It has like a creeping neurosis to it. He's singing, "I swear they smell the blood on me. I hear them coming for me." It's brilliant. Incomplete Kisses is full of wonky electronic synths that slow jam in this really syrupy, languid way. The trappy reverse faults would probably sit at the peak of a Drake record, but I'm really glad it's here instead. 4th track, No One Knows Me Like the Piano, would probably come off as the most derivative and least innovative track here if it wasn't for the beautiful imagery that Sampha conjures up in his lyricism. This track talks about his mother's home, a place where he found his musical voice, and as he sings, "No one knows me like the piano in my mother's home." It's a really gorgeous bit of imagery. An emotive, passionate record, and I'm really excited to see what comes of Sampha after this. Great record number 1 of February. Xiu Xiu, Forget. This is an album probably worth going into blind. Anyone that's listened to this record without reading any reviews or anything first was probably shocked by the abrasive vocals and maxed out synths on opening track The Call. I mean, I definitely wasn't expecting it on a first listen. Although having said that, I shouldn't have really been expecting anything specific at all because Xiu Xiu are such an unpredictable act. They've done things like their version of the Twin Peaks soundtrack last year. They've done collaborations with Merzbow. They've done experimental reworkings of Mozart's The Magic Flute. This is a band that are not afraid of experimenting with forms and ideas, and that makes them a very exciting prospect, but it means you don't know what you're going to come into when you're listening to a new project from them. These experiments don't always pay off for Xiu Xiu, but on this record, Forget, they managed to create something that has a hard-edged experimental sound with this unearthed pop sensibility, and it creates something so engaging that this record is fantastic. I love this record. I really do. This album straddles the line between a discordant, glitchy electronic atmosphere and then genuinely catchy elements of pop music, and you can hear it really clearly on tracks like Wondering that they stomp through the entire time. So catchy, but they have this hard edge to them. They have a jagged atmosphere about them. Jamie Stewart's fragile and emotive vocals merge so brilliantly with that amalgam of glitch and glittering pop, and it makes me, I don't know what I want to do when I listen to some of these tracks, whether I should dance or whether I should tuck my head between my legs, because it's not all stomping pop at all. There are moments of this that are genuinely frightening and disturbing. Forget is a really difficult track. It has an intense paranoia and neurosis which shoots out via these fizzing synth sounds and Jamie Stewart's anguished vocals. There's a moment where acoustic guitar or clean guitar sound comes in before it's just swallowed by this necrotic descending synth pattern. It's really quite a terrifying monolithic sound they create here. If I had enough time to do an entire video review on this record, I would, because I think there is so much here and I love it, but I just don't have time. But this is my record of the month. Absolutely brilliant album. Please go and check this out. Thundercat, Drunk. First off, this album far surpassed my expectations. I am really enjoying this record. Thundercat, also known as Steven Brunner, is a very talented bassist, singer and producer hailing from LA, and he has been working with so many different talented artists over the past few years, be that Flying Lotus, Kamasi Washington, Kendrick Lamar, Erykah Badu, and so many more people. Although I enjoyed his previous two records, they paled in comparison really to absolutely monumental records like Kamasi Washington's The Epic, Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, Flying Lotus's You're Dead. I mean, that is a trio of incredible records. Well, with Drunk, Thundercat has created his best work yet. It's a funny, funky, bizarro piece of work. And it has a lust for life, but it also has a lust for the weird. I feel like this is the creative level that Brunner's been striving for in his own personal work, and he really does achieve it here. This is a collage of ideas and themes and styles, and it ping-pongs all around, but it never loses focus or quality throughout its 23 tracks, its 51-minute running time. He employs styles and tropes ranging from funk to soul to jazz, and impressively he manages to weave this tapestry without ever sounding too derivative and being able to do it without becoming pastiche. I mean, that's quite a difficult thing to do because he is riffing off of classic sounds and sounds that might be considered cheesy in the modern music world and the contemporary music world. But he pulls it off with a very clever merging of contemporary and then throwback sounds too. That fusion of the past and contemporary can be heard in a track like Captain Stupido, which really effectively kicks the album off. You have these syrupy jazz keyboard chords and very clean bluesy guitar phrases, but the whole track is driven by electronic drum sampling, and you have Brunner singing I Feel Weird, Comb Your Hair, Brush Your Teeth, Still Feel Weird, Beat Your Meat, Go to Sleep, which is quite funny. Lava Lamp is a gorgeous slow jam I've pretty much had on repeat since the record's released. I love that track. Is a track that, one, makes me sound like I'm having some sort of seizure, but also it really effectively portrays how great Brunner is on the bass guitar. Just check out some of the riffs on that thing. And then also the track Tokyo, I think it will become a future classic. It's got a really great narrative about him becoming obsessed with going to Tokyo and buying anime, and there's a line that says, Goku fucking ruined me. It's great. Perhaps the only major misstep was the guest feature vocalist Wiz Khalifa. It just seems out of place and doesn't really fit, despite quite liking the production on that track. But other than that, I'd highly recommend checking this album out. It's really good. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Flying Microtonal Banana. I enjoyed 2016's Nonagon Infinity quite a lot, and it showed this wayward, invigorating streak from the band that I was looking forward to seeing more of on future releases. The band are certainly hard workers, I'll give them that. I mean, they're apparently going to be releasing 5 records in 2017, Flying Microtonal Banana being the first record, and this is also their 9th release since 2012. I mean, that is a lot of work. The problem with Flying Microtonal Banana for me, which is a sentence I never thought I would utter, it's so bland and boring. I said this about a record last month, and I don't want to sound like I'm repeating myself, but it just plods on in a very bland, uninteresting way. The core gimmick of this record is the microtones that the band use. They've had their fretboards redesigned so they can play microtones on their guitars. For those of you that don't know, a microtone is a tone between a tone. So you have sounds that are either slightly flat or slightly sharp, and it just adds this off-kilter sound to the tracks. I'm all for experimentation, honestly, and I appreciate the attempt to harness some kind of amalgam between raga and this psychedelic rock haze, but it just doesn't pull off. By the final track, and I've listened to this album multiple times, I just found every single track was just merging into one another, and not in a way which created this singular cohesive experience, but just in a way where everything sounded the same and mashed one into the other, and I found myself just losing interest as I listened to it. If you're going to use microtones, then you need to do it in some kind of engaging way, because this, for me, just sounded like they were putting microtones over the top of these dull, chugging, repetitious riffs, and that's just not interesting to listen to. It just sounds bland and not very good. And I hope one of the 4 records they're going to be releasing this year after this is better than Flying Microtonal Banana, because I can't say that it would push me to check out their music if they continued down this style or this path. Didn't like it, in case you hadn't realised. Ryan Adams, Prisoner. Now, in my last video, I actually laughed at the prospect of Ryan Adams' new record getting a unanimous critical praise, partly because he's always seemed like quite a divisive figure in music. He tends to split people down the middle, and I didn't see why this record would probably be any exception to that. But I was wrong. The reception to this album has actually been very strong across the board, and I think that's very much down to the fact that it's being hailed as a classic breakup album, not just by himself. And obviously it's based on his own experiences, but the record label and the marketing is pushing that, and it's been the focal point of all of the critical reviews that have been coming out about it. I think that's why this album hasn't really done it for me, and in general why I find Ryan Adams' musical output a little bit uninteresting. I'm someone who's a big fan of that American blue-collar Springsteen sound, that heartland America soul. I mentioned it when I reviewed Japandroids last month, and it's something that Ryan Adams has used before. That is very much part of his style, but it's even more overt on Prisoner. This is a record out of its time, borrowing heavily from lovesick rock ballads, that jangly requisite steel guitar, the tambourines, the reverby electric guitar lines, the husky grit voice, even harmonica. Don't forget the harmonica. That's not to say Adams doesn't know how to write a song. I mean, he's written some really catchy tracks here. Track Do You Still Love Me is pretty great. Doomsday makes the most of its harmonica-led sound. Outbound Train had my head bobbing. I enjoyed some of these tracks. The thing is, if I want to hear this sound done to perfection, I will listen to Born to Run, Darkness on the Edge of Town, Nebraska, and unfortunately what comes off for me on this record is a weak, pale imitation of that sound. If you want to hear a fresh and engaging take on that sound, listen to The War on Drugs' Lost in a Dream, because that album is something special. So yeah, Ryan Adams' Prisoner, not really my thing, but keen to hear what you guys think about it. Elbow, Little Fictions. I've got to be honest, I've never really quite got the hype surrounding Elbow. You know, they seem like nice guys. I quite like Guy Garvey's BBC Six radio show. I listen to that sometimes. But really, for me, their music's always come across as a little bit sterilised. You know, they're not allowed any rough edges on their sound. They don't want any rough edges, so everything is overproduced. It's produced to perfection. And for me, that means any potentially great moments are kind of muted by that radio-friendly sheen. And I can't really say I can find anything else different to say about Little Fictions. This is the band's 7th album, and again, while some of the writing might be competent and catchy, it's just sterilised. That's the best word I can think of. I've already used that word to describe this record, but for me that does perfectly pinpoint what I don't like about this. I listened to a review. I didn't listen to a review, I read a review recently, and the reviewer used the word sophistication, and I would say that that's probably partly where the band falls downhill on this record. They want to make a sophisticated sound, but that doesn't necessarily mean playing it overly safe and making sure everything is so produced. I'm not saying every single album has to have this ragged production style, not everything has to be abrasive to be interesting or clever. But you need to offer something. If the songwriting is not particularly exploratory or different, then there needs to be something else to catch. And for me, the songwriting isn't good enough, and the production isn't interesting enough to together create anything of any interest, to be honest. I mean, you don't need to have that. I mean, Radiohead's A Moon-Shaped Pool last year doesn't have a ragged production style. It's very well produced. It's very clean sounding. But it has a soul, it has a heart, and for me, this music doesn't really feel like it has a soul or a heart, despite being a very love-focused album. I mean, this album is based on, you know, Guy Garvey's recently been married again, so a lot of his lyricism's focused on that saccharine, sickly, sweet, lovey-dovey idea, and you can hear that on the opening track, Magnificent, which was one of the, I think it was the lead single for this album. And again, that has really cinematic strings, it has a spidery bass line, but by the time the chorus comes in, it's just so saccharine and sickly. It doesn't offer anything else of any interest, and I just find it so dull. That high emotion that obviously Guy Garvey's riffing off on this record is just never harnessed in an interesting way or very cleverly. There's tracks here that for me, I just forgot instantly once I listened to them. Track Gentle Storm sort of plods along. The track Head Supplies has this U2 style reverby refrain. I mean, if that doesn't put you off, I don't know what will. Yeah, just not bothered personally, not a fan of the band, wasn't a fan of the album. But I mean, what do you guys think about this? Because I know there are big fans of Elbow out there. Is there something about the band that I just don't get? You know what I mean? Tell me in the comments below. Moon Duo, Occult Architecture Volume 1. Ah, now here are a band who do the psych rock thing so well. If you're feeling the need for an injection of psychedelia and rock, you need to hear this record. Forget King Blizzard and the Gizzard, or whatever the band's called. This is the project of Wooden Ships guitarist Ripley Johnson and keyboardist Shanae Yamada. They're creating this musical odyssey that's split into two parts. Now, part one is obviously volume 1, which is going to be discussing and confronting the ideas of darkness, wintry depths, and then volume 2 is going to be the re-emergence of spring and life and light, funnily enough, to be released in spring. Can't get more psychedelic and spiritual than that concept, can you? Moon Duo are part of the Sacred Bones record label, and honestly, they sit proudly alongside the incredible roster of artists that they currently have. People like Jenny Haval, Blank Mass, Marissa Nadler. If you haven't checked out the Sacred Bones roster, you really need to go and check it out because there are so many great artists there to get stuck into. This record has a sinister, dark, foreboding sound. It really creates that thematic, wintry concept with neurotic synths, fuzzy guitar lines that swirl and shift in one another to create this grand, sweeping experience. Opening track, The Death Set, introduces this record with a phasery, fuzzy, blues stomp alongside Johnson and Yamada's languorous vocals, and it sets the record up so well. Crosstown Fade is probably one of my favourite tracks on this album. It's an up-tempo rocker with these glitchy modular synth sounds and a sort of motoric beat driving the track. A really addictive song. Closing track White Rose offers a glimmer of light through the moody atmosphere. It sort of cuts through and it offers a tiny hint of what's to come perhaps in volume 2, which personally I can't wait for because I really enjoyed this album. It's a great record and I'm excited to see how this journey is wrapped up in volume 2. Halo Orbit. Halo Orbit. I had to mention this record quickly because this was one of the albums that I listened to quite a lot this month, apparently trying to unearth something that it didn't really have. Have you ever done that thing where you like a musician or you appreciate a musician or an artist, and because of that, when a new record comes out and you don't really like it, you end up desperately poring over it, trying to unlock some sort of quality that you can't seem to see? Well, if you have, then you know exactly what I've been through with this record. This is a project comprising of Mars Volta bassist Juan Alderete, fantastic bass player, amazing jazz drummer Mark Guiliana, and then the Buffalo Daughter guitarist Sugar Yoshinaga, who is also, by her own right, incredible. Guiliana is a class act. He's recorded and performed with people like Brad Meldau, bass king Yannick Gwizdala, Avishai Cohen, and of course he performed throughout David Bowie's Black Star. And his actual playing on this record is fantastic. It's intricate and explosive, as is the confounding effects-laden bass work of Juan, who's a fantastic bass player. The guitar work of Yoshinaga is textured and varied and very intricate. All of the individual components musically here are very impressive technically. But the songwriting, guys, you forgot the songwriting. I don't know how many of you guys have listened to the recording output of very technically proficient musicians, people that have been session players or fusion players, but what can often happen when they all get together is they create an album. Because of all this technicality, it becomes this impenetrable, messy piece of work that ends up being nothing more really than just instrumental masturbation. This record in a nutshell. Opening track Sub Pump initially had my hopes up. I mean, it had this really great, dense, fuzzy bass, this 16th note drum beat, and these accented wah guitar sounds. But then, you know, after a couple of minutes, the track just wanders off. I don't know where it's wandering off to, and I'm pretty sure the musicians didn't really work out where it was wandering off to before they performed the entire piece and decided to chuck it on a record. Things go from bad to worse, really. The second track features guest vocals from Del, the funky Homo sapien, for some reason, and the track is this awful parody of a drum and bass track, basically. Ugh. I'm not going to waste any more time talking about this album, just steer clear of it. Sinkane, Life and Livin' It. I really hope I can introduce a lot of you to this artist because I think he's fantastic and he deserves so much more credit than he's getting. Sinkane, aka Ahmed Galab, is a London musician with a gorgeous, soulful blend of sounds ranging from jazz to Afrobeat to funk, even to Sudanese pop, which is an influence from some of the time he spent as a child in Sudan. This guy is an extremely talented musician and people within the industry are aware of it. He's worked with people like David Byrne, Ghost Poet, Dev Hynes, Damon Albarn. I mean, people are aware of his talent, and more people should be. I'm going to champion this guy because just need to be checking out this music. Sinkane can groove, and more importantly, he can write a feckin' earworm of a track. Not just one, but he can write a whole collection of earworm tracks, and that's why Life and Livin' It is one of my favourite records of the year so far. I mean, I know we're still really early on, but this is a really great album. Much like his previous LP, 2014's Mean Love, Life and Livin' It is just bursting with colour and vibrancy, really beautifully crafted songs, and the entire album is just a joy from start to finish. The sunny pop of track Favourite Song with its cowboy-fused beat that just dances alongside these sparkling synths and Sinkane's smooth, grooving voice. The soul-drenched Fire, one of the best tracks on the record with all these vocals joining the chorus alongside the main man, and this funk groove that I defy you not to move to somehow when you listen to it. This is one of those life-affirming, happy records, and how many of those come along these days? Not only do they come along, but how many of those are genuinely great pieces of work, and this is a genuinely great piece of work. Even if you don't think this is your thing, please take a little bit of time out to listen to this record. If you've had a crappy day at work or school or whatever, throw on this record and I'm sure that it will make you appreciate life a little bit more. And it's called Life and Livin' It, so, you know, does what it says on the tin. Sun Kill Moon. Common as light and love are red valleys of blood. Not for me. I pretty much love everything Mark Kozelek has done. I love everything Red House Painters. All of the Sun Kill Moon stuff up to Benji has been pretty amazing. I've found a really great connection with them. But honestly, this more recent period of Mark Kozelek, it's pretty divisive. Some people absolutely love it. I don't care for it, honestly. The stream of consciousness lyrics and the sort of languorous, unfocused songwriting just doesn't really do anything for me. That stream of consciousness style works so well on an album like Benji. Listen to a track like Carissa or I Watched a Film, The Song Remains the Same. The stream of consciousness works because that intricate description and intimacy is very personal. It's very focused. That's why it works so well. But also the songwriting is emotive as well. And I think where Common of Light of Love as Blood Valleys Red, or whatever the album's called, the problem with this album is that for me the songwriting is very unfocused and it doesn't, you know, the tune never really catches my ear. It just sort of sounds like this boring dirge of chords. And also, while there are moments of brilliance within the lyricism, there's definitely hints here and there. Overall, I don't find his lyrics they're not very good. That's not the word I was looking for. They're just, they're detailed, don't get me wrong, that's his part of his stream of consciousness. They're very detailed. They go down to the minuteness of feelings on very specific moments or harkening back to tiny memories that are kind of insignificant if you didn't experience them yourself. But I just find them a little bit unfocused this time around. I find them boring. I don't find they catch me in any kind of way. I honestly found myself not really caring by the time the third track had come in, and that's 19 minutes in because the first two tracks are sort of 8 minutes long each. So I'm just picking my eye. I don't even care anymore. I do what I like. It's my show. You still gonna watch it? Good. No, I'm joking. There's just nothing very engaging, and I feel like that's really lazy criticism on my part, but I feel like this is kind of a lazy album. I mean, Mark Kozelek doesn't give a shit if you like his music or not. He's said that plenty of times. He doesn't care what anyone thinks anymore. So, you know, he's not going to care what I think. He doesn't care what someone sitting in front of a camera and posting to YouTube thinks about his records. He doesn't even like the people that buy his records on vinyl anymore. So, you know, who cares really? But yeah, that attitude, I think, kind of engenders an album that just, for me, just feels a little bit arrogant in a way as well. Sort of calling a track Chili Lemon Peanuts and it going on forever and ever and never really having, for me, not really having a point to it. Again, it's a complete thing about taste, isn't it? It's some people really love this style and find that it's so engaging and it really captures you, and the fact that it doesn't follow a conventional pattern of songwriting really works. But for me, I need something that is a little bit more considered from him, and considering he's made some of the most beautiful tracks with Sun Kil Moon, but also as Red House Painters as well. You know, so many brilliant records in Red House Painters. I just want him to go back to that sort of sound, but I think he's pretty entrenched in this style now. So, you know, good luck to him, and I hope you know, he enjoys making these tracks, and I hope people enjoy listening to it. I don't know what I'm saying that. It's just not for me. Again, keen to hear your thoughts on this, because another divisive record, another divisive artist. So let me know in the comment section what you thought of this album. That last bit was a bit of a rant really, wasn't it? But I am recording this late at night, so that's my excuse. But thank you for watching this. Yeah, let me know in the comment section which albums you've listened to in February, because there's been a lot of releases. March is going to be a really great month, so I'm excited for that, and there's some new videos coming up soon. Thanks for watching, see you soon.